It is difficult to talk about a game when it becomes a spectacle. In these cases, people are more interested in talking about the events surrounding the final piece rather than the work itself. Because once brought up, even in a specific sense, the conversation is often derailed to talk about the awful stuff associated with it instead. This did happen when I talked with someone about the 2008 indie game Mighty Joe Off. In the conversation, I talked about how it has a rather simple game structure, featuring some artwork, a really long level, as well as one song. Their immediate response was,
"Oh yeah, that one, lol. By the way, that game kinda has a tragic story behind it. I can tell you more if you're interested."
It sort of reminds me of Lindsay Ellis's video about the Beatles and Yoko Ono. She recalls the story of a man walking up to her nosing her Beatles bag, and almost immediately tells her that the band broke up because of Yoko Ono. Of course, if this is your first time hearing about Mighty Joe Off on YouTube, I won't doubt you. Videos talking about the game are essentially non-existent, as what remains is mainly just Let's Plays and speedruns. And one quick look at the comment section, you'll see people itching to talk about what happened. Hello, I'm Dovin, here to tell you what happened, and here's my friend Chloe to read some stuff.
It's me, the classic funny character to lighten the mood once in a while and read quotes.
Mighty Joe Off was initially released February 29, 2008 by 3 people. Ananthropy, James Harvey, and Dupes. You play as a submissive BDSM lesbian with a boot fetish named Jill, who gets kicked out of the tower owned by her trans girlfriend. I mentioned the fetishes as it's very pivotal for the character.
My games are informed by my own experience. It would be strange if the characters weren't dicks or perverts. But one of my motivations to make games is the distinct lack of real characters and desire in games. We see characters in commercial games who are supposedly dicks, but they're written by men and drawn by men. They don't look like us, they don't express themselves like us, and they don't lust like us. I want there to be games that are actually about queer women.
The game is inspired by Mighty Bomb Jack in the way you move, ascend, and descend. You can actually see the gameplay on screen right now if you stop drawing for a second and actually just look at the screen. Jill will receive wide acclaim through many online gaming news publications, as well as an LGBT-focused magazine, Extra. The attention it garnered would also land it a spot as a playable character in Super Meat Boy, another contemporary platformer released around the same time. 2 follow-ups were released, with Joe Off Harder, as well as Joe Off with One Hand. The latter being a one-handed game where you just jump around and such. The former released 8 months after the first game, which is quite the turnaround time. When you beat the original game under 12 minutes, you automatically start the even harder levels. Though in the latter itch.io re-release, if you just type in Queen during the open sequence, you can get access to a new level. I had beaten both of the main games, and of course they were very hard. Some parts are often to deal with, as you need pixel perfect accuracy, sometimes being on the literal edge to make a jump. Gameplay-wise, it's pretty challenging but rewarding over certain hurdles, though I had to watch a Let's Play once in a while to actually see how to get past certain things. I probably wouldn't recommend the game to many people, even if you like games like Celeste, as with that game, a lot of the platforming makes more sense. Perhaps I wasn't cut out to be a BDSM lesbian after all. But anyway, why are we talking about such an old game? Well, the character Jill became popular on Twitter in 2024. June 17, 2024, Twitter user Geometry Yowie tweeted,
"Indie games rock, dude."
The user would post images from the game and text from Wikipedia noting the lesbians and BDSM. This would cause many people to find a character and draw fan art of them. All was going pretty well until the ex of the creator would talk about the old game on the website co-host. She would discuss how the game was based on her relationship, noting how uncomfortable she was throughout the whole thing. But the ex would display affection the most toxic way possible. She continues to say that a lot of this was personal stuff from over a decade ago, that she wishes people not to talk with her about it, and peace be to her ex. As for the creator of Jill, she commented that she won't be talking about a relationship that ended a decade ago. The person that made the initial tweet would later take it down and apologize to the ex. She would state that no one that got excited about a concept and made fan art is at fault. But that I mean people were happy to see a game featuring a lesbian lead character as well as a canonical trans character as well. To get a frame of reference, can you comment right now how many mainstream games where you play as lesbian? I'm not counting RPGs where you create a character, I mean the character is canonically lesbian in the text and not said after effect when the game's been out for many years. Okay, we have Last of Us 2, sort of Necromancer, it's kinda hard to find more. So when this game from long ago was rediscovered, people thought it was a miracle. Defined representation of oneself in a game like this was amazing to see, but of course this would be soured by the backstory of the game. As I mentioned before, talks about the game post the realization leads to more difficult discussions overall. But before we get into that, we're gonna take a small little break. You may have heard the term
separating the art from the artist.
This can mean many things in many different contexts. Say if you like Harry Potter, you can just ignore J.K. Rowling's later transphobia and still enjoy the series. Though there is that theory that black mold caused transphobia, but we're getting off track. So at the very least, despite the awful creator's words, people are still able to enjoy the characters. But for Mighty Joe Off, that would be a bit harder, as the game, per the ex's word, is directly based on their former toxic relationship. So there is a more personal negative connection to the work. She would note that at one point, fights, her voice would be heard in the game. As the longer you took to complete it, you would hear her getting hit by a whip. I couldn't find that in the newer version, so perhaps it was passed out. Though it is important to mention, this was consensual. What made them uncomfortable was their ex's insistence of making their relationship a bit more public than they would have preferred. However, as I mentioned before, 3 people worked on this game, and the creator never made the character design. That would be James Harvey. While Anna designed the sprites, James was tasked to make the character. And there's actually a very big section on Wikipedia talking about it, so I'm gonna do a little deep dive into the design. He states that there's a fine line between cute and funny to repulsive, that he wanted to make a design that BDSM folk could see and non-BDSM people would be fine with. Actually, comparing the final design to Catwoman 1989, you might think it's actually tamer. For the Queen, a character that doesn't have a sprite, James was given a loose description of the character, aiming to draw a
fully grown human with relatively realistic proportions.
Though he initially had trouble with the Queen's Tower, and he originally thought of drawing a smooth straight one, but felt it would be too phallic.
Which would be meaningless symbolism given the game's content.
Perhaps with all this in mind, it is no different than a person commissioning an artist to draw some OCs. So add a game-specific content, drawing these characters could be fine. I'm not saying the idea of reclaiming OCs, but rather simply just drawing the character because you like it. You know, the character designed by James Harvey. When Jill made her rounds on Twitter, he would reminisce on the game, even showing art he drew during production, and that's quite nice to see. Though of course, this would never solve replies or comments, such as the case of when I was talking about the game in a vacuum to the other person, they wanted to make sure I knew about the awful stuff associated with it. Same for all the comments shown earlier, either mentioning or joking about the situation. Even this very old video showing off the character from Super Meat Boy, the most liked comment is poking fun at the situation. I had seen this done preemptively for Jill, as Snail Salt had to clarify after posting fan arts that, yeah, they know the backstory of the game. One comment even saying that the drawing is aged. Misty Whiskers made a quote tweet of their own drawing, making sure, yeah, of course, I also know what happened. And they actually made a nice comic of Jill breaking out the cycle and being her own woman. Good for her. This is what I mean when I talk about the game becoming a spectacle. In wanting to draw fan art of a design you like, there are these unspoken rules you must follow in order to get it out there. Or, much like the post mentioned before, just outright take down the art. As we saw before, some people would just assume you support the bad thing. Again, you can just like the character design. It's fun. The character design's nice. And I should make it clear that the formal relationship should not affect discussion of the game itself. I had seen a picture on Twitter about a piece of art seen both by an artist and an artist you don't like. It isn't a healthy discussion when it comes to impact or overall execution, as liking the game or art of Jill is completely fine. Bashing the game for grievances of the creator is not separating the art from the artist, as bad people can make good art. However, that's only in a vacuum. For this game, it doesn't matter how much separation you have between the art and the artist. Jill is essentially an off-limits character. That's why discussion of the character on YouTube usually starts and ends with speedrunning the old game. And to be clear, this is not an expose video of any kind, nor you should talk to anyone involved. I just wanted to focus on how a project, and more specifically a character, can be abandoned by the people as quickly as it rose to the top. In fact, before the co-host statements, this video is originally going to be about how good character design can revitalize an old game to a new audience. And it is worth mentioning, the co-host websites will soon be taken down, so there won't be many ways to actually know what happened with the character. And the question of, is it worth drawing this character, that I have to clarify, yes, I know everything bad about it, I just like the character. Of course, this is the note that not every fan art will have a disclaimer, and not every fan art has comments telling them, hey, do you know about this bad thing? Nor do I necessarily think that it needs to be there. Considering that this game is nearly 20 years old, it's free, and seemingly most people who draw the character never actually play the game, doing a one-off fan art for the character is fine. Or for the case mentioned earlier of Jill breaking free, that is also nice to see. But let's get a second opinion, as I asked my audience what they thought of the game.
I played it on livestream. It's mid, but I'd love to deep dive the history when I can, especially with how much Twitter is freaking out about it. I feel like the cutscenes are the only visually interesting parts of the game and the reason why it got popular. It was really cool to see a lesbian BDSM relationship that wasn't portrayed as abusive or overly sexualized. At the time, I thought it was just 2 girls who matched each other's freak, but then the creator's ex came out and admitted that it was based on their abusive relationship, and it ruined it for me. Can't have shit in Detroit.
The story of Mighty Jill-Off is an interesting one to look at, starting from an indie game with character design inspiring many nearly 20 years later, to quickly being abandoned just as it came back to the public eye. But moving away from the last part, you can see how a good idea can be rediscovered with fresh eyes. That people can see the artwork that you did and give love to a character, even if you believe people have forgotten. This should give some hope to aspiring game devs and artists that perhaps their works just need a little bit of time them to truly be seen for what they are, and that you can still be inspired by an idea even if it's partially soured by the backstory of the concept. In the end, there really isn't anything that could be truly done for Jill, and the character in the long run would have been very nice to have. A mainstream lesbian platformer is something you don't hear about every day, though these are just my observations. I'm not a lesbian, so my insights won't be as personal as someone more in that community, and I would like to hear your thoughts on these concepts in the comments below. So what is the conclusion and meaning of this full video? Besides talking about how an awful situation can affect a game even after many years, well, the main point is that if you're a lesbian game programmer, please go make a platformer starring a lesbian right now. There's clearly a market for this sort of game, and with Jill out of the picture, there's a void that needs to be filled. What are you doing? Still watching this video after you like and subscribe? Go make that right now. Go make it. Go make the game.